Okay, Clive already mentioned 5.6 gigs, which is really the buzz at the moment. And I've called it a lot of fun for less than £100 because actually that's what it is. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to give a quick reminder of what the fuss is all about and how you can get involved. Have a look at a couple of the things that have taken place and the activities that have taken place. A couple of short videos at the end. And then Brian, G4EWJ, wherever he is here somewhere, is going to come up and tell us about how one particular team of guys went about deciding where they could do a record attempt on 5.6 gigs and looking at the path and working out where the good parts would be. And then he'll probably kick me afterwards because 2 weeks after he did that, we just sauntered up to a hilltop and beat the record. Just like that it was. So what the fuss is all about is using transmit and receive modules which were made for drones, for the first person video, for the downlink video, using those on the amateur bands, because what we found out last summer, a year ago, was that there are a number of transmitters on eBay which were designed for around 5.8 gigs to be used in the license-free band by these guys. But because of the way the UK amateur license is and where the drone allocations are in the rest of the world, they also covered another part of the amateur band down here at 5665. So by buying the right piece of equipment and setting the switches, you have instantly got yourself a transmitter that will run 600 milliwatts out and a receiver which is pretty sensitive, and they work on the amateur bands and they work straight out of the box. And so when you buy from eBay, that's what you get. That picture is actually quite deceptive. I'm meant to bring mine's back in the Land Rover, and there's 2 or 3 pieces of this kit around this weekend. I mean, that is not that big. That is that big. It's amazing. 600 milliwatts. Yes, that big. And the receiver is slightly bigger. You get all the bits and pieces, typical Chinese phono plugs, you know, not non-screened as they should be, non-screened leads. But what it meant was that all of a sudden amateur television becomes very accessible to everybody. Everybody can have a go at this. And with a few simple rules, you can get on the air very cheaply and very easily.
Are antennas available?
Yep, antennas are available. I've got another slide on that. We'll come on to that. I've really just said this already. Video and audio in, RF out with preset channels. RF in, video and audio out on the receiver. So it really is that simple. They run from 12 volts, so messing around with additional power supplies. So wire it all up. A couple of notes though. First of all, the receiver produces noise, and a lot of the flat screen TVs these days don't work on noise. They go to blue screen, so you have to trick them into believing that there's sync there, and there's a number of ways of doing that. There's another little box off eBay you can buy for about £25, which will fix that. You connect up the antenna, and that antenna can be any 5.8 Wi-Fi antenna. So a lot of flat plates, some people run flat plates. We've got examples of flat plates. Or there's some grid antennas, which are slightly more expensive, but available at rallies. Or you can go to the extreme of using a Sky Mini Dish, which are available from your local recycling place, because that's an ex-Sky Mini Dish somebody threw out and ended up at the local tip that I bought for a couple of quid. One point is single or 2 antenna working. You'll see this guy here has got 2 flat plates, and the actual equipment is directly on the back of the antennas. And the reason why he's got 2 antennas is because it saves having a masthead or a changeover relay, because 5.6 gigahertz changeover relays can be quite expensive. So in some respects, it's easier and cheaper to run 2 aerials. So if you're not careful, if you don't buy the right thing, the relay could end up being the most expensive part. That's all I really want to say about the equipment. Just talk a little bit about what's being done. Clear line of sight paths. 60 to 100 kilometres actually is quite easy. It's been done a number of times. People go out and do that. The best DX so far, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, is 180 kilometres. Don't forget, this is £20 kit off eBay, you know, on 5.6 gigs, 180 kilometres. We run horizontal polarity. You can peak listening to the sound, so peak the dish using the sound. And there is also a group of people who are using this for wideband voice. PW did an article about 18 months ago called the PW Siren, and there, I mean, this is really sacrilege. They take the yellow phono and they drive it with 1 volt of audio.
And the rest. Why would they do that?
To get audio, to get wideband audio. Yeah, they do, all right? And of course, the performance is no better than you get on TV because it's still 27 megahertz wide. So this has turned into a bit of a, I guess we kind of encouraged it because Dave and I went out and did, last summer went out and did 138 kilometres from Dunkery to Cleve. Although Sean would say it's 136 kilometres. But anyway, we kept poking people and saying the Southerners have done this, the Southerners have done this. And sure enough, Brian and others turned up and went from North Wales up to the Lake District. So that was 153 kilometres. I was up in Norfolk for the weekend, so we went up to North Norfolk coast, and Barry went to Bridlington, and we did 158 kilometres with no planning, just 2 weeks after Brian did that. But then the Cumbrian guys got involved, and a group of guys over in Northern Ireland, and they have now done 180 kilometres over that path. And this is all for less than £100. So that was the first, that was Dave received me at Dunkery, and I think this is John, or no, this is one of the Cumbrian guys on his last attempt. Note the two dishes. So that's all I'm going to say. I've got a couple of videos to show you. The first one is Yorkshire down to Norfolk. Now, what these guys have done is they've discovered that on eBay, as well as a receiver having an analog video and audio out, there's also certain variants which do USB out. And he's plugged it into his Windows phone. The Windows mobile phone sees it as a webcam. So he hasn't got any hassle at all with having to defeat the blue screen sync or anything. So his system is literally his phone and a very small receiver on the bottom end of the aerial. Now, the other thing you'll note is that we were very, very fortunate the day we went out because we had some classic over-the-sea enhancement. And if anybody's ever been to the seaside on a warm day, if you look at a horizon, you will get that brown band in enhancement. And that's exactly what it was pure fortune. It wasn't planned. We just decided we'd go and do some tests. And on that day, there happened to be some temperature inversion over the sea. And so what you're about to see is 158 kilometres from Bridlington, I think he was running about a watt, down to Norfolk. And this is what he did it on. And there is some audio on this, Ashley.
Is it still P5?
I can't see it.
It absolutely is.
You stay there, Pete.
Right, can you do me a... Can you just show me the dish? Just turn it round, Pete.
No, I'll just turn it around for Noel's benefit. Okay,
Just
go
round,
again.
get me
Go.
good.
Go again.
Right.
Then it went a bit mad.
I bought that thing as a used on
I just want that.
So that was the first attempt, and that was a definite P5 picture. As you'll see when I go back under the coat to try and, as you can see, it's still P5. But then we really went a bit mad. So he'd also discovered that if he made a cardboard box hood, so he poked his phone in at the side, okay? So I think it was a cat food box, but it did the trick. So now you'll see this is Barry AGN up in Yorkshire, and it's a bit snowy, but in a moment you'll see why it's a bit snowy.
It's a clever little antenna, though, isn't it?
Yeah, that is why they use them, isn't it? On the
Is that
So if you draw out, yeah.
That's the
I
actual
think
drawing
so.
antenna.
I think that's what they use.
I suppose they can sell enough to make them cheap, can't they?
It's the thing, you must be using it.
So yeah,
You need the angle of the box down there. Oops, done a bit there.
so that was Norfolk. Now, you know, you got to understand that there was a lot of enhancement going on there. You know, if you went out today and went to the coast and you probably wouldn't get the same results. But it just goes to show if you don't go out, you don't get. And the final video is off YouTube from the GI Cumbria. I'll only do a short clip. It's not actually as good as, but it's 180 kilometres. Now I think that was probably under relatively flat bank conditions. I don't think they had too much enhancement, but they were using proper systems, to be fair, the types of higher gain dishes and we've been talking about. So that's it, that's the last slide from me. So the paths that have been worked are shown in red. Here's the original path that Dave and I did, straight up the Bristol Channel. There's Brian's path from North Wales up to the Isle of Man. There's the Belfast path, and there's the Norfolk path. Plenty of room, plenty of places to go, guys. Come on, you know, I mean, look at this path. Some of these from Northern Ireland down, or along the south coast, or we think even there's better paths up there. So plenty to be done. And the only reason why I put the orange one in there, this is not unique. People have been doing this for years. And I don't think we capitalised enough this summer, because that orange path is, I think it's about 650, 700 kilometres. And that was done on 10 gigs in the 1970s. 1976 that path was done. Wideband FM from southern Scotland down to Cornwall. So get out there, you know, it's there. We just don't make enough of it. So, you know, where will you go next? And now Brian's going to come up and tell us where he went.
Are there only analog transmitters available on receivers, or they do digital as well? These Chinese
I've only seen
analog.
analog. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there any 5.6 activity across the channel?
Holland. There's a lot of interest in Holland. Yeah. 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 So anybody on the East Coast, I mean, really, as I say, it was all a bit ad hoc when we went to Norfolk. We should have probably told the Dutch, because I think from what I saw, we would probably have worked the Dutch. So,
Right, afternoon all. Earlier this year, the Wirral ARS were interested in getting into 5.6 gigs. and it's nobody very local to us, and we saw that the furnace group were already active, and with some nice hills not too far from either of us, we thought it'd be worth having a go. The furnace guys are it's Chris, M0KPW, and Nick, G0HIK, and RT, and myself, G6NOI and M0LCR. Even though we're based on the Wirral, it's not a very good place for hills, so we usually pop out to North Wales, and there's plenty of scope there. This is the equipment we use. Fairly standard stuff, the A32 receiver. Not sure the number of that, it comes out with various numbers. I like this one because it's got a fan and a heatsink on it, some of them get quite hot. We went for the single antenna approach with 28 volts coax relay, and there's a 28 volt inverter there. And the usual wiring. So we just couple that up with a 24 dBi panel and snowy monitor, no blue screening. And that makes a very compact station. Just add a lithium battery. In fact, for the last contest, we just took it out the back of the car, switched it on, and just held it and pointed it at people, and didn't even put it on a pole, which is quite handy. It's a pity all the other bands couldn't be as easy as that. It's built by G6NOI. Also, we've been trying using dishes. One of the furnace guys, Chris, he uses the flat panels, and Nick uses an 80 dish, so I thought we'd have a go at that with our 60 dish that we normally use for 3 sems. This one is on the wiki, and someone's taken it to pieces. It seems to be a PCB Yagi, and these are just standard pins in the waveguide. I've got those here, it's not much to see, but I'll pass them around anyway. Not very local for sourcing, unfortunately. This one comes from Serbia, and this one's on eBay though, so you can get it. About 30, 40 euros with carriage, depending on whether customs take an interest or not.
From where?
Sorry, this one's Serbia, this one is from Russia. And his website translates quite well. The double one doesn't do any more. I did a very quick, very crude range, set up a Pluto and a mini tuner, just to see how they compared, and they were both a few dB above the panel with a 60 sem dish, I should expect. And this one just had an edge, I think. I couldn't go to parts of dBs with mini tuner, but I got the impression maybe half a dB better, but still both very usable. So this is just going to be a quick look at some of the paths and sites we used rather than an actual video of operation. There's a few sites we use in North Wales at NWR, and so I just gave those to the furnace guys and see if we had any line of sight paths to start with. So this Dolphin one is probably our lowest site, which is the easiest one to get to, about 40 minutes drive away. And again, Berkerig Common is quite easy to get to and fairly close to them. So we started with this, and not particularly high, but 101 kilometres done very simply. There's no trouble at all. That's the radio mobile plot of it, so it's line of sight, but it's not Fresnel line of sight. Negative loss for obstruction. I've seen positive figures as well. I'm not quite sure what to make of that. It's usually positive, but that went very easily. So we thought, with the record being held down south, we thought, well, we must try and get close to it, see what we can do. So went on to another of our sites. Just a photo of the Dolphin site. Really just a lay-by at the side of the road. It's G6NOI adjusting the panel antenna. and the looks like the Russian feed on the dish. But both systems were working fine. So this site's easy to get to, good takeoff round north round to east, southeast. Very difficult to find a southeasterly path from North Wales, I find. It's very tricky, there's always something else in the way. That's the Cumbrian end, that's M0 KPW system. Two different antennas, which is an interesting variation. Again, it's an easy site to get to, plenty of room, no problem at all.
Where the antennas come from?
You'd have to ask them. There's quite a few suppliers. There's some on eBay. There's a company called Wi-Fi Stock, UK company. I've had some stuff from.
You know, I've probably got something.
Hmm.
Well, certainly.
So just look up 5.8 gig antennas. They usually call them that. You can get some with backing boxes on, which is handy for building things in, waterproof boxes. The idea is you put in your comms equipment. I don't think I've got a picture of those, but I think maybe on eBay or Wi-Fi Stock again. That's an alternative to putting everything in your own box. So we looked for a longer path, and with the southern record being, was it 136, 138, we thought, well, we'll try this one first, see what happens. And this is Asclusion Mountain near Wrexham. Again, a fairly easy site to get to. And the furnace guys came up with Corney Fell in Cumbria. A bit remote, but again, that was a fairly easy contact. Usually around P4 averaging out. Never seem to get many P5s. Maybe that's due to the lack of pre-emphasis and de-emphasis. But you do need a very, very strong signal to get it completely noise-free. Again, the radio mobile plot is pretty good. No problem with that. And not much in the way of obstruction loss. This wasn't the day of the contact. On the day of the contact you couldn't see anything. We were in the mist. But that's north, roughly over there. The mountain is off to the right. You can't get on top of it, of course. You can. There's a footpath you can climb up, but if you put antennas up, you tend to get chased off it. So we're stuck with just the take off to the north, quite good for Blackpool area as well, and M0DTS on the North York Moors. I think this is the only place we've actually worked, Rob, on having two ways on 23 sems and 2 meters. I don't think we've managed it anywhere else. It may just be luck, but it's pretty good out that way. You've always got the Pennines, of course, in the way, but it's a good takeoff. This was the Cumbrian end of the contact. That's more like what the weather was like. That's a nick on the grassy knoll. Not much chance of aiming at things in the distance. But I find that it's not very difficult picking up. You can just hold it and move it around a bit, and it's not too bad at all. There's quite a bit of leeway. I think 4 to 8 degrees. Somebody said for dishes and panels. Dish is a bit more touchy. So the size of the antennas, the dish will be producing a few more dB as it does. So then we wanted to look a bit further. The site near Denby, Bulkeye. It's one we used for a few years. We were out portable one day looking for sites for working Rob on the North York Moors, and this one looked pretty good. This is the Hey What's That site, which is good for seeing what paths are like, seeing what's in the distance. The red parts are the line of sight areas, and the blue is the horizon. So it's pretty good for Blackpool area, Fylde Coast. There's 3 repeaters there, 2 metre activity, nothing on 6 SEMs yet I don't think. 10 gig as well, so 10 gig repeater in Fleetwood. Plus very good to the Isle of Man. GD1HIA, haven't heard of him operating for years. It's a pity really, because they're about 130 or so K contacts. They're very handy in the contest. But the interesting thing was around about here at 150 kilometres. That's the sort of distance we were going for. Fortunately, with the Lake District being so up and downy, when you actually zoom in on it, you tend to find it's sort of mountain goat territory. The road is about 450 metres, and these are going up to 700 plus metres very steeply. So it's a bit of a climb, but there was some line of sight showing either side of the road, so it seemed promising to try and have a go. And hey, what's that is a bit inconsistent sometimes. It's you click on the red part, it draws you the plot, and there's something in the way, as though it's the two halves of the program aren't quite in sync. But it looked promising. So that's 153 kilometres, that path from Bulkai. And when you actually zoom in, very conveniently, there's a pub hotel with a big car park. So deluxe site. You don't seem to have to go very far off the road to get into these red areas, but those hills are very, very steep. So, going further afield, you have to get higher. So, pretty reasonable heights, 153k. And that was a fairly easy contact as well, no problems. Again, the plot, it's just getting in there. Radio Mobile seems to be a bit more optimistic than, hey, what's that? It doesn't seem to think there's a problem with an obstruction there. Obstruction loss, not very much at all. This is the Bulkai site. Nice wide area. It looks like they're opening it up for the entry to a wind farm to get all the big bits in. And north is roughly there, Lake District roughly there. Slight problem with this site now, well, one of 2 problems, is that GB3MP repeater on 2 metres, which used to be over there, has now relocated to there. It's right on the line of sight to Cumbria and Blackpool. So there was some problems during the contest when it was used. Just a bit of desensing going on. It's Chris and Nick at Kirkstone Pass. At the end of the car park, a nice little mound there to put your antennas on. You tend not to be disturbed by anybody at that end of the car park. I think we only had one inquiry by passers-by from Chinese tourists when we went there. G4EWJ went to Kirkstone Pass for the IIOU contest, and this is looking back from where the antennas were in the previous shot. So, nice car park, pub hotel, but very narrow exit angle. There's about 15 degrees where you can get out. So it's roughly there. You have to miss the near hill and miss the far hill. So it's pity really, but that's the Lake District for you. Anywhere that's clear everywhere, you've no chance of getting to, and certainly not in the car. You can see how the hills are going up the side, the same up the other side. You can see in the last one that that's the sort of thing you'd have to climb up, perhaps a bit easier. This M0DTS said that it'd be worth trying this for an optical contact. I think the record stands at 136 or so for audio-ish, somewhere around there. So 153, and it's, you never really tell whether it's line of sight until you get there. But I think it was in the contest we were on 3.4 gigs, and G4EWJ went to Bulkai, and we were on we were on this 17 dBi panel. He had a 1 meter dish. We had a 4 watt Pluto into a 4 watt purple amplifier, and a strong signal, of course. Then we just tried dropping the Pluto slider, and we dropped it by about 34 dB. So if that is actually correct, we were down to about 2 milliwatts until making it on 3.4 gigs DATV at about 333K. So well worth a try for the optical people. That's about it. More info on Chris M0KPW's website, and lots of videos of operation from both ends, the Cumbrian and the North Wales end. That's about it.
Any questions?
Have you thought of
Of the,
using any higher locations in North Wales? Are there any high spots up there?
Do you want to distribute the mic?
Are there any high spots in North Wales that you're contemplating using? Are there really high spots in North Wales?
There are always high spots, but there's always something in the way. It's using the mapping programs. It's you just put your click on it, and then you look at the horizon, and you find even Snowdon is not as good as you might think it would be because of things in the way. But that 1353K path is the longest drive on I can find. There are higher places, but they're not drivable, so need a bit of an expedition. But the search continues.
Right. What sort of power consumption does the gear need? I mean, in order to consider carrying it in a rucksack up to the top of a mountain?
Never actually measured it. I don't suppose it's going to be very efficient at 5.6 gigs. So lithium batteries seem to cope, but it just depends how long you want to work for, I suppose.
Long enough.
Yeah. I suppose we ought to do that. We climb up the top and run out of power halfway through.
Okay.
Brian, have you considered using preamps on the receive side, or has anybody experimented with that?
Yes. An alternative to the standard receiver kit, we've used a DG0VE converter and I think it's a Pace satellite receiver. That was probably a dB or two better, so the standard drone modules are pretty good. And some of the amplifiers do have preamps in them, so it would certainly be worth trying.
Have you considered using passive repeaters to get round obstructions that are in the way?
Not as yet, no.
I did an experiment on 2 and 17. It was very effective there for a specific issue.
Just bouncing off mountains, that sort of thing.
Well, more getting the situation I had was there were 2 remote stations that couldn't hear each other, but a third could. But if you can direct it around the obstruction, you'll be able to get longer paths.
No, haven't tried that. It's
And 5.6 gig antenna is a bit more efficient than a 2.
you mean back-to-back antennas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Antenna.
No, I haven't tried that in any band, but be interesting.
They do work.
Okay. I think we're running a bit late, so we're going to have to terminate. Thanks, Brian. Thank you very much. And if you go away from here thinking, I ought to do something, that is a good place to start.